So hey everybody, I am back with the video that I said I would be putting up shortly after the other, and this is going to be the first video in a series of my getting into Muskets and Tomahawks. And so everything from looking at the rules, not tutorial or anything like that, but just sort of my impression of what I'm reading and what I think of the game, and you know, just some of the models eventually that I'll end up getting, and terrain that I'll be working on and putting together. So I'll just, people might think, well, why another game? Why this one? There are a few fundamental reasons why I kind of picked this game up and purchased this rulebook, and I'm looking at investing in more models. And I guess the first thing is, when I was playing 40K and I was looking at getting into historical before I even got into bolt action, the first thing I really wanted to play was Napoleonics. And I even posted in a local game group that I belong to, just to see whether anybody in my community was playing or interested, and there really wasn't anybody playing. Now, I recognize that for some of these historical games, I mean, where you're playing large fields of troops and things, and I think Napoleonics can be the case. It's a bit intimidating, and if people aren't like right off the bat kind of interested in getting into it, it's hard for me to invest in an army. And so I still find that time period quite interesting, and I'm not saying I won't in the future someday be involved with that, but this game, when I saw it and became aware of it, because it's a smaller skirmish style game within that black powder sort of period, it seemed very appealing to me. Now, with that said, even though I live in Canada, I grew up in New York, and I'm actually from Long Island, New York. You might not be able to tell that from my accent, you might, but it's been many years since I lived there. But growing up in school, we learned quite a bit as a young kid. I learned quite a bit about the Iroquois and the French and Indian Wars. It was something that we learned in history and social studies, like in what we would call middle school or junior high at the time. And so I've always found that time period interesting. But then as well, I'm a fan of Last of the Mohicans, and I just like the genre, and so immediately that seemed very, very appealing to me. I didn't know about the game at all until Tristan or Aethelith, started putting stuff on his channel, and then as well, another person who I follow their channel, and I think it's a subscriber of mine, is Justin Borges, and he also put up a number of videos about this game and is invested in it. Now, there isn't a lot that I can tell, there isn't a ton of stuff on YouTube for Musket and Tomahawks, but there is a bit, and it's been out since 2012. It's not new. There are a lot of people that have been playing it for a bit, but at the same time, it's not nearly as prolific as some of the other games that are out there. So I watched a number of battle reports and things, and it looked really, really neat. Part of the reason why I really got excited for this is the success of bolt action for me. I just mentioned in the other video that sort of a smaller skirmish game based on history, not a huge upfront investment compared to some games, although both of these I would say are not small either, but they're not nearly as much as some, because it is a smaller. You can go with some of the small scale conflicts, I think, from what I could see so far, without having to spend too much money. And so it seemed like a really good fit for me for my next project. Couple of things that I noticed in the videos that really made me excited about it was that it has randomized tables, for subplots, for your commanders and for victory. And so it's not just main scenarios, but also randomize other plots, which I think is a lot of fun. It's not exactly the same thing as the bolt action randomizing which plane comes in, but it's that kind of stuff that I find brings a lot of character to the game. And it happens in a random way to make it kind of fun. And so I really like that. I like the rule mechanics that I've seen so far. I really like. and just in general, just the opportunity for modeling and utilization of artillery and various kinds of skirmishers and ordered regular infantry and things. Just looks like a lot of fun. And so, and then I like, of course, like Bolt Action. Bolt Action works with dice, where you random your orders and who goes next. This does it with cards, but it's a very similar principle. So it's another game that's not you go and then I go. I kind of like that. So that is my rationale for why I'm looking at this. I've not read through the book at all. It's got a color cover, but the interior is black and white. It isn't a cheap book to buy, considering the size. Almost any way you look at it, it's a pricey book in my opinion, but I do balance it with a couple of things. So I paid 50 Canadian for this. You know, that is pricey by most rulebook standards. It comes with cards. They seem to be good quality cards, you know, in a little card case. Actually a decent card case, much better than other companies that sell cards that I'm familiar with. You know, that I'm basically, you know, don't have a, I'd have to get something like this. Usually they just get scattered in a box between books or something. And so $50, a lot of companies would charge around $16 for a deck of cards like this, without the case. And let's just say I could get these for 10 if it was a game where they sold them separately. Now it's $40 book. Dice are six-sided for the game. So I don't have to, you know, most people have six-sided dice that are playing these games. But let's just say, you know, for whatever reason, you know, if you had to buy some, because that's a, you know, some sort of thing you need, or even like, you know, like your templates and things that you would need, you know, that's another more than 10 bucks. But let's just say another 10 bucks. So now we're down, because you don't need that for this. So now we're down to $30. And so, you know, like when you look at it like that, cost avoidance for other factors, then the fact that it's a small skirmish game, and so you can get away as I can see it, probably from a Canadian dollar perspective, around 45 for like a large unit, and then a smaller unit like another $10, or no, like another $16. So you can probably get away for like 70 bucks for your force, like your introductory force, which I think is actually really good for these kind of games, you know, for the most part, you know, as compared to most games. And so, you know, I actually think it's not that bad of an investment. Now, one of the things about this company, and people can correct me that know more about Studio Tomahawk, but my understanding is they don't really make money off miniatures. Like in this, at least in the course for this game, basically people use other companies, you know, for their miniatures, and so people are using Perry, Conquest, Warlord now I believe has the Conquest miniatures, Eureka. They're using other companies' miniatures, so they're not making money off of your miniatures as far as I can tell. And so you gotta, I mean, if it's a good rule set and you really are gonna play the game like only because of this rule set, like you're not gonna play like with another, you're not interested in another game system, then, you know, spending that kind of money might not really be a bad deal in my mind. People could argue, you know, that's just really your personal value of money. So basically what my plans are is that because I've had such a good experience recently with a demo where we've recruited new players for Bolt Action, I am looking at funding, you know, like creating a demo conflict where I'm going to do some miniatures for both sides. So this way I can actually invite some local gamers to play it, and they'll be with my miniatures. It is going to be a little bit more pricey to do that. I'm planning, I have an idea of the miniatures I want from what I've seen on videos and have read, but I don't actually know for sure until I read the rules and to know the point values. I'll tell you that my plan that I have is actually to have a French force with these I forget what they're called actually. I think they're Marines, something Marines, which are kind of like in between skirmishers and regulars from what I can tell. Like they're actually can be both, you know, and so they're not straight regular, but I have to read the rules. And I was thinking about having a small 6-troop Indian force to complement it. And then as well, I was going to have a British regular force, like a regular British troops, as well with another 6-member small Indian force to accompany it. And I was hoping that would get me to a 200-point list, and to be able to field those two. So I'm guessing, like, I'm looking at the Warlord miniatures, and so I'm guessing like this is like around 20 troops, the British one's around 20 troops, and then I'll have 6 Indians on each side that basically will ally with them. And that's going to be sort of the demo of the game. You do have to have some buildings in the game, and really for me to play this game the way I like to play it, I'd really like it to be a fairly treed, wooded board, and have the ability to have significant amounts of forest, you know, for the French-Indian conflicts, upstate New York, lower Ontario, Quebec, like those areas. And so I'm going to get a whack of trees to support this. So I'm going to make them, put those together. And as you saw in the other video, I purchased some buildings for bolt action. I've always wanted to have my hand at making some buildings from scratch. I've actually done that with ruins in the past, and I think somewhat successfully. So I've started for bolt action, or excuse me, for Muskets and Tomahawks, making a building. And what kind of inspired me to do this was Tristan's video where he made buildings from scratch. And so this has a long way to go, but I've actually started making this building. I'm using popsicle sticks. These are sort of the roof pieces that will go on here. I've not made the roof yet. And so some of the inspiration for this was Tristan and what he ended up doing. I don't think I'm doing it exactly the same way as he did, with materials completely, although I think he used popsicle sticks too. I've actually made my chimney. You can see pencil on there because what I did is, this is foam board, and then I used plaster to make the chimney, but it's basically a foam board skeleton, and then it's covered in plaster. And then I used just a razor knife, hobby knife, to actually make the brick work. Underneath I have brickwork here. The plaster's actually gotten a bit crushed there, and so I'm going to have to repair it. It was a bit dry, but I've got the same here. I've got a plaster all in a fireplace in the back, and so you can see that's going to be the fireplace. And then, and of course, you know, I've done it on this as well on the back here, plaster on the bottom. I've learned some stuff through this as far as you know, making my building with the chimney, and I've got it on MDF board and just how I want to line everything up. Like, I've definitely learned some things the hard way. Made some adjustments for what I've done, but in the end, you know, I'm hoping that that it'll be a nice cabin. You know, this style with the window and the door here, although not the exact same measurements, has a resemblance to the foreground model that they sell. They have like one with a little window and a door like this, and then a fireplace. And I made my cabin instead of like a ranch style where you have a door here, a bit longer, maybe this way, I don't know, with like just sort of a porch or something, to just really like, it's going to be just a peak coming down this way. And Foreground does sell one that's kind of similar, although I've made my building, my chimney, much simpler than theirs. They have an awesome looking model that they sell. And so yeah, this should be kind of neat. I'll do I'm not sure if I mentioned it, but I'm going to do a, you know, hardwood flooring in here as well. And I'm going to cover up both of these. And it's going to be a little project that I'll do while I'm reading the rules, thinking about the lists. I'm not rushing this. Like, I've got some other painting to do for bolt action, 40K, some other things. But I expect probably in the next 2 months I'll be painting miniatures for this, I would think. And during that time I'll be commenting on the rules, showing a bit for terrain that I'll be doing for it to set up the demo. And it should be a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to it. there's lastly, you know, I know I've kind of rambled on and on about why I'm doing this, you know, and people are probably like, I don't care, you know, why you're doing this, just show me what you're doing. But just to mention, you know, again, why I kind of like this, there's something about the era in history where you had a gun, so in this case a musket. It was highly inaccurate compared to today, and you really didn't have much opportunity for repeat shots. I mean, like, you really had to make your shot count, and then there was a long loading sequence. But of course, if you made your mark, you know, if you got your shot in, I mean, it was gunpowder and it was a firearm, you know, which, you know, it excels in many cases against other weaponry, of course. And so I like even the idea of, you know, that tension of technological change in warfare, where you have, you know, Native Indians, you know, basically with their war clubs and bows and things, and they're coming down upon you, and you got to make that shot work. And, you know, if you're in a line, you know, where you've got 10, you know, 5 people behind you, and you're with 4, you know, shooting, you know, you really increase your chances. But you have to really, you know, there's a lot of risk involved, and that's what I imagine it to be, you know, from that time period. I've seen, there was one sort of public broadcasting channel movie I saw once where there was just some cavalry that came in, probably during the Napoleonic era, period, where they came in on some folks, you know, with muskets, and man, like, they came in so quick and they weren't prepared, and they just took them apart, you know, with their swords and horse, because for a long time before, as I understand it, before artillery was king, you know, where Napoleon really was the first one that I understand that was brilliant with artillery and changed the nature of warfare and using artillery. Cavalry was king, and pretty serious to deal with. And so this idea of having this game where, you know, you've got these muskets and folks using guns during that technological change, and then but still having that component where other stuff is pretty serious. I mean, you know, like melee, you know, if you're playing, I understand that cavalry is not as big in French Indian War games because at the time it wasn't utilized as much, but, you know, whether it be War of American Independence or some cavalry that did happen to make it in the French Indian War, it was pretty serious, you know, to be up against that. And so I think that tension, you know, adds kind of to the fun and the evaluation of these miniatures and units and how they operate. And so, you know, that's me kind of geeking out on my rationalization as to why I want to play in this era. And next videos, I'll show progress on this cabin. I'll be talking about my thoughts on the rules once I've read them, and what my plans are for picking up miniatures. For those of you that already play the game, feel free to correct me on the things that I got wrong, even in describing it. And also, just let me know how you're liking it so far, or how you've liked it in the past. Okay, everybody, so that's it for now, and see you on the next video. Take care.